Hey guys, it's Nailbiter, and I've got some more close quarters gameplay here for you guys. This is a round of Conquest Domination on Scrapmetal that I recorded yesterday. And Scrapmetal is actually probably now my second favorite map out of the four of them. I think Danya Fortress is still my favorite. And I've played more of Operation 925, and I think it's a decent map. Ziba Tower is probably my least favorite now. It's kind of, there are too many small rooms, I guess, on that map, and it gets a little too hectic, I think. So, I mean, at least these maps, there's a semblance of, of order, I guess, and sort of the way you move about the map. And this is actually a really nice little cap spot over here, and you'll actually see there is a guy who had C4 on this flag and ends up blowing it up right there, and I'm out of the way, thankfully, because of that nice little cap spot. That is something that's kind of gotten very annoying when people just plant C4 on the flags and then camp them until just waiting for the flag to start blinking and then blow up their C4. That's happened quite often, and I think it's a pretty annoying tactic to use. And I mean, I know there's an assignment to get kills with C4, but you can't find a better way to do that. I don't know. It's pretty frustrating. So anyway, I'm using the AEK in this round. I thought I'd try out this weapon, and I've actually been using it quite a bit on some of these maps. I think it's probably the best assault rifle to use if you want to use an assault rifle on these close quarters maps. And for the most part, I've been using it with the foregrip and either laser sight or flash suppressor, but I decided to try it out with the suppressor in this round to see how that works. And I'm actually surprised you don't see more people use the suppressor because, you know, I mean, these maps are so small, and it's very easy to have, as soon as you shoot, it's very easy to have multiple enemies just on top of you. So, you know, the ability to stay off the radar and off the minimap can be very, very helpful. And so I'm actually surprised more people don't use this. I mean, I can understand not wanting to give up that laser sight attachment because it does make a huge difference having better hip fire accuracy. But I think the suppressor is probably a worthwhile attachment to use as well. It definitely has its advantages. And I thought it was pretty effective in this round. But anyway, there were a couple other things I wanted to talk about in this video in regard to the close quarters expansion. Just a couple of things that I've noticed as I've been playing the new maps a little more. And so one thing I actually did was I turned up my brightness in-game because I noticed I was having some trouble actually seeing enemies. And you know, I mean, especially on a map like Scrapmetal, which has a lot of shadows, and I mean, you can see the kind of crazy lighting. And the colors are sort of dark as well, and I mean, there's a ton on screen in all these maps too. They're aesthetically they're very cool to look at, but you know, sometimes you can get a little overwhelmed just with all the stuff that's on your screen at once. So I know, at least for me, I was having a little bit of trouble seeing enemies when my brightness was turned down a little bit, and so I found that turning up my brightness helped out quite a bit. And you know, it just made it a lot easier to see people. And so that's something I'd recommend you do if you haven't already done it. It makes it so much easier to actually see what you're shooting at, because I've been having just trouble aiming at the enemies. They were like blending into the background. So I'd recommend turning up your brightness if you haven't done that already. Another thing I've noticed is that you can actually get revived a long time after you die, and I mean, the respawn countdown or the respawn timer is a lot shorter on these close quarters maps than it is in the vanilla maps or in the strike or the back to Karkan maps. But what I've noticed is that if you wait a few seconds after the respawn timer has gotten to 0, you can actually still get revived. So what I've started to do is, if I think there's an ally near me who might be able to revive me, instead of respawning immediately or as soon as I can, which, you know, I know sometimes the instinct is to just, you know, spam the respawn button until you can spawn in immediately. But if you actually wait a second, you know, you can definitely get revived, and it's happened to me a few times. And especially if you're working with somebody, it makes it a lot easier to stick together. And it's also a good way to avoid having to spawn back in, because I know the spawns on these maps can be a little crazy at times. You know, I never like spawning on squad mates because I feel like there could be an enemy coming up behind them at any moment. And the random spawn is similarly messed up, so I'll talk a little bit more about the spawning later, actually. But you know, just if you're able to avoid spawning back in, I think that's a good thing. Or having to spawn back in, I think that's a good thing. And it also just keeps your death count down, which is always nice. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about for the rest of this video was the spawn system. because from what I've played of these maps so far, I think they're actually a lot of fun to play when you know they flow well and you don't have too many players in a server. I think from what I've played, 24 players is probably the maximum number of players that I'd like to play these maps on. 16 actually works pretty well, I think, and 24, as I said, is probably the max. Anything beyond that just gets a little too hectic and frantic, and there's just too many players on these maps at once. But what I wanted to talk about regarding the spawns was, in particular, the random spawn, because I found that it happens more often than not that, you know, when I spawn back in, I'll either spawn near enemies or, you know, as I'm running around the map, enemies will spawn near me. And I think this is the biggest issue I have with the close quarters maps, is the spawn system. And it's what takes away most from these maps being fun, because it just adds this element of randomness into these maps that, I mean, it's impossible to predict when an enemy is going to spawn behind you, and you have no control over it. And essentially it just feels like, you know, at least from what I've played, that I'm getting 2 or 3 deaths per round that, you know, I had no control over, that, you know, weren't really deserved. It just was, it's like the game deciding that I should just get a death. So, you know, I think if anything could be done to fix the spawn system, I don't know if there's a way for DICE to fix this, because I know the spawn system in just the vanilla Battlefield 3 was broken when it was, I mean, not broken, but it wasn't very good when the game was initially released, and DICE was able to fix that. So I don't know if this is something that DICE could tweak, and, you know, this wouldn't really happen nearly as much. But I also I kind of am wondering whether or not this is just something kind of inherent with these really small, fast-paced maps, because, you know, I think of Call of Duty, and I know a lot of Call of Duty players have been complaining about the Modern Warfare 3 spawns, and I don't think Infinity Ward has really done anything to fix those. But what I'm not really sure about is, you know, can you have these fast-paced maps that are smaller, along with a working spawn system? Because it's, you know, a couple of games at least, the spawn system seems to be one of the biggest flaws in each game. And the reason I find the spawn system so frustrating, and why I think so many other people find the spawn systems frustrating, I mean, I'm assuming I'm not the only one who's noticed that the spawn system on these maps really isn't that good. But I think the reason that it frustrates people so much is that, you know, people end up getting these deaths that they really had no control over. And, you know, I don't mind really when I get outgunned by somebody. If somebody has better aim than me and takes me out faster than I can take them out in a pretty fair gunfight, I have no problem with that. But it's these deaths where, you know, it's just, it's not like it had nothing to do with my skill or my aim or my positioning. It was just, you know, just random bad luck. I think those are the deaths that I just find most frustrating and take away most from the experience of playing a game like this. So, you know, if DICE could do something to fix it, I think that would be great. And, you know, it's not like it's a game-breaking issue, but it does get frustrating after a while. And obviously, I think it's worse on these maps than it is on the vanilla maps, because the vanilla maps are so much bigger than these ones. Which is, you know, it's just kind of a shame, because I think these maps are a lot of fun to play. I actually really enjoy the fast-paced action that you get on these maps. So, you know, we'll have to see if DICE does anything to fix this. Maybe when the actual expansion is released for everybody else to buy, they could potentially do something to help fix the spawns. But I'm also curious what you guys what you guys think about the spawn system, if you've played these maps already. And also just what you think about, you know, these elements of randomness in general in video games, because I think in some games, particularly in Call of Duty, they're adding more and more of that stuff that's kind of acting as skill equalizers. So I mean, the video is just about finished here, but let me know what you guys think about that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I talked about some random stuff, but hope you guys enjoyed it. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.